Welcome back. This is episode 47 of the Smart Nonsense Podcast. I am Dylan. That's Henry. On the podcast, we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, and challenging norms. Today, we were going to do a pod club, but that pod was so good, we had to evolve it into a book club. This is book club on the Innovation Stack, Building an Unbeatable Business One Crazy Idea at a Time by Jim McKelvey.
Talk about a pivot. We crammed this book this morning.
All right. I was listening because Belky doesn't contribute much to the podcast. So I was like, Belky, you got any good, how I built this episodes or whatever? Actually, first you shot down doing another Tim Ferriss.
No, yeah. It wasn't that I didn't have good episodes. It was, I felt like we were doing a whole bunch of the same thing. It wasn't a feeling. It was just the truth.
That's why we got nervous, started scrambling. We're like, all right, we got to do something radically different, which didn't end up being that different. But James Altucher, I like his podcast. I stumbled across this gem with Jim, and it really opened my eyes because I think seeing all these different perspectives to business, like we have the Teal perspective, I have this Freed perspective from Basecamp, just a lot of different sivers, like a lot of different approaches to business.
It's overwhelming.
It's really cool.
It's overwhelming. And to have just read 0 to 1 again, maybe 4 days ago now, who Peter Thiel basically says, monopolize, do your own thing, be really good, be 10 times, 100 times better than everyone else. And then now in Innovation Stack, it's basically like copy, and then kind of figure those things out as you go. And that's how you obsess over the details and then you become better.
I think maybe the approach is different. It's interesting to contrast them because you have, like, in the end, you're going to have that 10x difference. I think you're still going to be super original. Like the idea is, how do you get to that original idea that's just dominating the market? And here it's the Innovation Stack. So basically, it's kind of hard. Like, there's a lot to cover, but the idea is like copy as much as you can. Like, imitation is the best. That's what the difference between business and entrepreneurship is. We'll get into that, I guess.
Ooh, his definition of entrepreneur.
I know that's going to be good.
Yeah.
But basically, like, copy as much as you can. You know, we're what's that word? We're creatures that like to copy, whatever that is. And then when you need to, that's when you innovate. And when you have a lot of innovations, you stack them on top of each other. It's this giant moat that you can build around your business that it's very difficult for companies like Amazon to then come in and try and drive you out.
Speaking of moats, though, let's talk about who the entrepreneur is. And I think what he says about the city wall is so good.
It's so vivid in my mind right now. I love it.
Yeah. I think he boils it down to, like, yeah, we call a lot of people entrepreneurs. Some of it has negative connotation, but what he's really trying to get at is an entrepreneur is someone who's crazy. It's the rebel. It's the, like, change maker that if everyone is in kind of the town walls where it's safe, and your world is defined, the entrepreneur is the person who's, jumping over that wall.
Right.
And I think it's really good too. He says, like, where the market ends is where entrepreneurship begins. And every market ends. Every market has an ending, even right now. And that's where entrepreneurship begins. It's very cool.
I think, and Jim does acknowledge this, where there is kind of the same way we talked about the creep of terms with, like, harm and from coddling the American mind, of the American mind. Like, this creep of that term, you have the creep of entrepreneurship now being businessmen. When in the beginning it was like you're starting something completely new. It's never been done. There's no sort of precedent for you to work off of. And so that was the original definition. And now it's evolved to just anyone starting their own business. But like the podcast, for example, I'm not being an entrepreneur. I'm just copying a lot of models, trying to add my own spin. It's not yet unique. It's not yet testing a new ground. Whereas Belky with Dunbar, you're trying to do something that's, relatively speaking, pretty new. I think it still has some uniqueness factors that it can incorporate.
Correct. But it's also important, in the same vein as Jim's saying, is it copies a lot of things other entities are doing well and doing right. And he goes even a step or 10 steps further, and he's basically like, from birth, we as humans, as a species, or really anything on this planet, is our job is to copy, and we replicate from day negative, whatever in the womb, and we're replicating all the way through. Like that is the crux of how good things are made. If you want to say humans are good, but um, it's like copying is the fastest way to get somewhere. And then, oh, what did he say? Okay, so then at least what I took, I think we might have kind of taken away the innovation stack being a different thing for each of us. And that probably plays into some confirmation bias. But for me, the crux of it was he's like, jump in, copy, do the thing, and then ask yourself or keep saying, quote, so we have to, right? We jumped in, we started this podcast, so we have to get a better microphone. We got a better microphone, so we have to have guests on. So,
Well, that's why I feel like you see people, and I'm trying to imitate some of the original thinkers in the podcast world, where, for example, we'll say like a James Altucher, like he has a studio, he has a whole team around him, and maybe he was one of the first people to really invest like a media company into podcast space. So he already did that. Now I'm just copying, but he was the one that kind of you figure out what you need to do and then you just execute. But now he has a moat, so it's super intimidating to see like look at all the infrastructure he has built around him, and that's why it's so much harder for people to penetrate. I do want to, before we get into too many details, kind of go through Jim's story, because maybe whoever's listening doesn't know who the hell he is.
I didn't till this morning.
And it's fascinating too, because he's one of the most influential people in the business world and the just general world today.
Okay,
and
who is he and who should care?
So he's someone that he's always been this sort of entrepreneur person. He never really worked for anyone other than IBM, and that was barely working. And he had this one kind of funky company, I think in the 90s, and he stumbled across Jack Dorsey.
Which I didn't know and was like crazy. He's got Jack Dorsey as a 16-year-old. It was they really liked these espresso covered beans or almonds or whatever. And it was, I think her name Marsha Dorsey, who was Jack's mom, worked at the corner store that sold them. And she just like, made him hire Jack as an intern. And like, what?
Right. And what happened? Well, one, it's hilarious because that's why environment and just surrounding yourself with these people is so important, because this story wouldn't be the same without Jack. And who knows the trajectory, how it'd be different. Sorry about it.
I think you have to chalk that up to luck, right? When Guy Raz on How I Built This asks, what portion of this was luck and what portion was just your grit and determination and hard work, buying coffee beans from Marsha Dorsey down at the corner street to have her son, Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, come intern for you at 15, 16, you got to chalk that up to luck at some point.
Yeah, sorry about this.
I don't hear it.
Lawnmower in the background, but yeah, it's crazy. And I think they were both in St. Louis, because I guess they're both from St. Louis. Funny enough, because our best friend is working there. But yeah, so he stumbles across him, realizes Jack is this incredible worker. Like he's just taking on projects without even being asked, like redesigning logos. He jumps into coding, computer science aspect of whatever they're doing, and just crushes it. And so I think they end up splitting off. Jack does Twitter, but then actually Jim does glass blowing. But then they come back together. And keep in mind that they never were in the financial space. Like Jack was doing Twitter, he got ousted, and then Jim just had this problem with glass blowing, where he had this one ugly piece of art that someone came in and wanted to buy for several $1,000s, but they couldn't process the transaction, and they ended up not buying it.
Just another great example of solving your own little problem. That was all over the book, all over these podcasts. I don't even know what they were on that we listened to. You'll have to put them in the show notes. But so much of it is like, have your own little problem and then copy from there. But continue.
Well, yeah. So he solved his own problem, or was trying to solve his own problem, unless Jack has one more person come on to help with the actual app programming. But their idea is like, this new technology, mobile, let's use it because everyone in the world has it. And like literally everyone that's a business person has this, but they can't charge transactions because any sort of mobile card reader is $1,000. So they're like, what if we just have something that you can plug into your phone and then you can charge transactions?
And stop there. It wasn't just like iPhone had developed their document reader, like something to plug into the charger port, and he went further and said, like, why do we have to do it that way? He's like, instead, let's utilize the microphone jack and turn a card swipe on a magnetic strip into an audio signal.
That's so, because this is one of those areas where for me it's overwhelming, like just thinking about the hurdles, because they have Apple, right? And Apple's fierce about who can, plug into that jack or whatever jack. So they even had like a conversation with Jobs where we're supposed to convince him. Then they have to convince all these credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, etc., the big four, and then also the government is regulating this. So it's just so many obstacles that they're just one at a time trying to break down.
Yeah. And we've talked about it too. He says it was just another way for them to circumvent convention. And we've talked about, like, blatantly refuse formalities. I think he had that pitch with Steve Jobs, and he was like, well, what does Steve really like? What is the Apple brand really like? And it was, aluminum and sleek and metal. And he went out that night and made sure that the prototype he was going to pitch to Steve Jobs was exactly that.
Well, how funny was it too that they were testing it, and he realized, because the way Jack was holding it or whatever, it started picking up his heartbeat as a signal. So it turned from he had like
card reader to a cardiac reader.
Dude, that was fucking hilarious. This writing, by the way, is phenomenal in the book. Like, he rewrote it 7-8 times. It really comes through. I love it. One thing that I wanted to mention too, because I think it was a funny story, and hopefully one day we can talk to Jim, because I want to hear his exact perspective. But they're talking, I forget with whom, if it's I want to say Amex. Is it Amex?
MasterCard might
I want
have
to say
first.
Amex. Sorry?
It depends where you're going. I think they were working with MasterCard first.
Isn't MasterCard bigger than American Express?
Maybe.
Bigger.
I don't know.
Whatever.
What's the point?
So the point is they go in, like, one of these big credit card companies. It was Ed McLaughlin is the guy. And they're like they want to convince him to accept these transactions, because it should be great, because now you can open up the market, increase transactions. They shouldn't be against it. But they're at their whim. Like, if they're like, no, we don't want to do that, it's against our policy. And actually, they had thought of this, and they explicitly wrote in their policy, like, you can't do these microtransactions on
day one. They figured that out. They went to start a company. Day one on the job, they find out it's illegal.
But so they end up going to this credit card just higher up and being like, hey, this is the product, and then, like, let me test it right now. They take his credit card, swipe it, transaction goes through for like $1, and he's like, oh, so this was like a mock transaction. Like, no, this actually, check your bank account, it went through. And then he's like, you realize this is against our policy. And then Jim right here, this is so clutch. He goes, yes, I know.
That was it?
And leaves it.
That's it?
Like 20 seconds. He's like, yes, I know.
I missed
and
that.
And at the end, he's like, all right, we're going to rewrite the policy.
That is what's that book? Never Split the Difference. The silence. You have to, at least 4 seconds of silence. Yeah,
that's what's funny too, because Jack Dorsey, and I've listened to his Joe Rogan podcast. He's super calculated, kind of like Elon Musk, just like really slow, thoughtful. And Jim's just not that way. Like, he felt the nerves and everything. He was so scared of public speaking his whole life. And just to sit in that silence, and that's the effect.
Speaking of Never Split the Difference, it was at this same time when he was mock swiping cards, but not mock swiping them. He was on Sand Hill Road, right? Like notorious VCs in Silicon Valley. And in their pitch deck for the beginning of Square, they had 140 reasons why Square will fail. And I thought, man, if that isn't Never Split the Difference, get to know, show them all the problems and why, like, they're on the table and you're going to fix them. Brilliant. I want to pitch like that.
I see that all the time. It's just knowing your negatives, your faults, and then saying, we're all aware of it. We're trying to solve it. That's the essence here. I've seen it with hiring team people on the team. Like, you don't want someone that just like pipes up everything on the resume, because like you can put 5 stars for all these skills. You want someone that puts like 2 stars in a certain area or something, just to show that they understand. It's so cool. I actually heard Gary V calls this the 8 Mile strategy. You ever watched that movie?
No.
Well, the last rap battle, Eminem, he has to go first, and in the rap battle, like the person that goes first, they're, it's the worst position. But he just calls out his own problems, like he lives with his mom in a trailer park, like he's poor, he's white, etc.
He starts rap battling himself.
He shits on himself.
Oh, yeah.
So the other guy rap battling has no fodder. It's over. He has nothing to work with, and so he has to give up the
Another
mic.
one, I was watching that show Review last night, and he was reviewing Road Rage, and he got out to fight a guy in the car in front of him, and the guy in front of him takes out a crowbar and just starts smashing his own car. His own car. And then the host of Review, his name's Forrest, starts smashing his own car. And so they're in a smash off, smashing the fuck out of their own cars. And there's a physical example. Maybe we can get that clip in the show notes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I guess just, bash yourself, but show like, hey, you're gonna fix it. Like you're great at fixing. You recognize.
Yeah, they didn't
problems.
fix it. The car in front, who wasn't the host of the show, drove off a cliff and he died. But that was the irony. Yeah, spoiler.
Well, so they have all these obstacles somehow miraculously overcome. And this is actually my interesting take on it, is because I've always been taught like there's the danger of the first mover, because you're lowering all the barriers for everyone else to enter, because now the policy has been adjusted thanks to your hard work for years. And so that's why I was worried. I'm like, you have big players come in like Amazon that want to do what you're doing.
So what I thought was great here, he said, you're not going nose to nose with someone. You're going nose to toe, right? Amazon's like so huge. Your face is literally at their toes. I thought it was so cool that with this fear, in the face of all of this, his solution was to do nothing. He said, we've done all of these things for a specific reason. We think we've done them right, and for that reason, we're going to do nothing. And they beat Amazon. I don't think they really know why they beat Amazon.
Well, here they talk about it a little bit. I'm not sure where, but basically, you look at their innovation stack. It's because of the innovation stack. Because you have, and I listed all of them. I think it was 13 or 14. Like, they're super simple, right? It's one fee, nothing hidden, 2.75%, and that's it. It's free sign up. So like they brought the cost from $1,000 for the card reader down to $1.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so small that they just give it for free. They actually put it in a $2 box.
Yeah.
So it's twice as expensive as the product to make it look super nice. Everything's beautiful. The hardware, the software. They have no actual live customer support. So it's like they designed it so simply that you don't need a support team.
Oh, that's like a system you would do.
Right. Like you just want to eliminate the need for people as much as possible. Like think Gmail. Like you've been using it for decades, but when have you contacted Gmail support? Never. It's just so simple, straightforward. Speed, whatever. There's a bunch of different aspects, plus no advertising, which is really cool too. I want to talk about later. But it adds up to 14. And so say you have, it's like only 80% of people entering the market could get over this innovation hurdle. Well, now you have 0.8. But if you take it to the 14th power, the odds of you beating Square in this case is infinitesimal. It's so small.
Yeah.
And so that's why Amazon comes in, they're cocky. They have this big card reader that's like 3 times the size, and they think they can take over the market.
Better, right?
They actually undercut them too.
Yeah.
And so this is what's interesting, because this one premise, and this is what surprised me, because I've always been taught you don't want to be at the bottom of the market. Like you don't want to be competing on prices. And it's funny because they're at the bottom of the market, but they're not actually competing on prices, because they keep their 2.75% fee. Amazon comes in at like 1.95 or something like that. And so Amazon objectively is better from the fee perspective, but they don't budge because they have all these other 13 areas where they beat Amazon.
Right.
And so that's why they don't have to change. It's not that they didn't do anything. They just didn't do anything differently.
Right. And the icing on the cake is Amazon goes down, and as they have to do something for all the merchants that were on Amazon, they send them squares. And I thought that was really cool.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Can you imagine I love it. So that's
It's
one
rare
of those
that someone beats Amazon like that, and Amazon
without
concedes
trying.
without trying, and then Amazon concedes in such a polite way. Something there.
That's why it's like you have to. Well, Jeff just acknowledged, like, man, we put all our resources into this, and you still beat us. That's
Who
why
the hell is Jeff?
Jeff Bezos.
Oh,
I'm on a first name basis with everybody.
Mike, I'm pretty sure it's Jim, but also we're on a first name basis there.
So yeah, you have the stack. The stack is so powerful. That's why I wrote the book. And let me just.
Can we talk about advertising? This is something.
Yeah. Okay.
Every single book we read is a different story. Okay. You've got Seth Godin, never advertise. You don't need to, create for your smallest viable audience. You've got Peter Thiel, who's like, use math and advertise so long as it's profitable. And everybody else in between and going other ways. I saw a lot of Dunbar's platform in the way he used customers to be his sales force. So they never advertised Square, and they were growing at 10% a week forever.
Insane.
And they were doubling, I think, every month or something, which is crazy. But he just believed, I think what he said about trust is really good. It's like you get one shot at trust, and a side effect of trust is love. And you need your customers to trust and love you so that they tell a friend about you. And yeah, so what's up?
Well, do you remember the part where he knew
Probably not.
that they were onto something? I think this was in the James Altucher.
Yeah.
In the taxi.
Go ahead.
He gets in the taxi, I think in Manhattan, and the taxi driver starts selling him. He's like, dude, check out this new payment processor I got. It's small. He's selling it wrong. Like, he doesn't really know the fees. He gets it all wrong. But Jim's sitting in the back of the cab, and he's like, oh my God. Like, if this is someone that we're not paying at all, and he's selling me on this product, it's game over.
Just imagine. Yeah.
Just multiply it by all the people that are using this right now.
That's network effects and that virality coefficient that we've kind of talked about. Like, is your customer willing to tell one person or two people? If so, you're viral. I think two
that's
people is viral.
Where this ties into the Peter Thiel and having that 10 times better benchmark. Because it was literally, there was no other option. Like, I don't know. It was just impossible to have all these easy transactions. And so that's why they're raving about it. So finding a way where, like, I think you keep testing until you have like the CD baby where people are begging you to have it, or Square, where they're like, you have to get on this. I think
I remember
important.
So poignantly when Snapchat came out. I've told this story briefly on here, but we were all 10 of us sitting in the basement, and a friend was like, yo, you guys have got to get on Snapchat. Like, it's just this awesome thing. That was network effect right there. And his viral coefficient was 9 in that case. And I think that's why Snapchat grew. So you couldn't use the app alone. It was,
and I remember
to use
same
the app
thing.
Alone.
Actually, what's interesting, okay, we're talking about marketing, advertising. They have Cash App. I was listening to another podcast, David Perel's podcast, and they were talking about Cash App and how they're like giving the cash to people. Like, I don't know exactly how it works, but there's so many different strategies to get it
As
out
a
there.
sign up.
I
think PayPal started that, actually. You invite a friend, they get $10, you get $10.
I don't know if it was the referral deal. I don't know. I shouldn't have brought it up, but I think there are so many different approaches. But in essence, if your customers aren't pitching your product to other customers, you have to change something,
right?
Because they're going to be your best marketing.
That's what it comes down to. But also, if you're trying to run ads and your cost of acquisition, your customer acquisition is, say, $80, but instead Square will send you a reader for free, which you might value a lot more than that. Now their customer acquisition is $1 or $2 for the postage. Same thing with PayPal. It was invite someone, they get $10, you get $10. That's a $20 customer acquisition. But maybe by traditional means, it cost PayPal $150. Like, that's why these referrals have become such good bonuses to sign people up on new platforms.
That's why I think it is important to have a rough idea of how much people will be worth, so that you can play with these different experiments of how to get new customers.
Yeah, you're turning it into a math problem. And
Yeah.
as far as we know, like math's never wrong.
Unless I do it. But all right, so I want to talk about this low cost and a different approach to profit
Wait, really
maximization.
quick, what was it in? He said Tycho Brahe, he's a physicist, died of a burst bladder. His bladder just,
Jim said this?
yeah, because he was waiting around in a banquet or something. It was at the end of the book. Sorry, go back.
All
I was
right.
just thinking
Well,
about that because I got to pee.
there you go. All right. Doesn't prepare for the podcast. So here's the contradiction, because I had my mind blown. I hear like Ramit Sethi type people being like, hey, sell to the top of the market. You don't want to be competing on cost. And then Jim has several examples. One is the most modern, I understand it the best. It's Southwest Airlines. They come in when you think of what is it? Not Trans. What's the Pan Am? You think of like Pan Am, this super high luxury. Like the majority of the market can't fly easily. Back when Southwest starts, I don't know when they started. Call it the '60s, whenever it was. After that, probably. But so people just couldn't fathom everyday people flying, and then Southwest is like, all right, let's challenge this assumption. They come in, they create their own innovation stack, right? They figure out how to have that turnaround time be 10 minutes by loading people. Like you don't have seats, you just kind of free for all, grab your seats. They only do direct flights. They don't have food on their flights. I don't know.
Only
They serve these
737,
peripheral.
same planes, same parts, all look the same.
So they have this stack, and it's so hard to compete. It was only until very recently that other airlines could come close, and that's carried them for decades. And so you have this question of, all right, where do you want to charge? Do you want to say, for example, just to make it simple, and I think they have this, is like $10 is the current competition for like a flight, or we could say like $100. It's $100 to take a flight to Chicago from New York. Then they come in and they could get the price down to like $50 if they wanted. So should you charge 50 or do you charge 90, profit maximize, and then, just make as much as you can? Well, they choose to go for the $50 because now you have this big gap in between you and everyone else where they can't even come close. So you have the innovation stack on top of this huge price discrepancy. Like no one can jump over that hurdle. Whereas getting the hurdle to like $89 for another company to compete with you when you're at 90, it's pretty simple. I don't know if I'm losing you with all the math here.
No, I smell something burning. And yes, it was a lot of math. I got what you were saying, but I smell something burning. I hope we're okay. What was the paradox there?
That's the smart. The idea is that you add price, like you have price. You don't want to charge like where you're not making money, like still you're a feasible business, but that's part of your moat. That's like another layer of the innovation stack is you have this such a broad disparity in prices that like, yeah, if you have a product and you're charging so much less than everyone else, like they can't even fathom getting down to that price. Whereas if you're just slightly undercutting them, it's easy to think how you can get there. But you're using the advantages of your innovation stack to get your price this low, and then you still want to charge that price.
Okay. I got you.
It's a different approach, and I haven't heard it before, but it makes sense because it's capitalizing on all the innovations you've made. And then you'll still be profitable there, and it'll secure your position for years. God, I'm dealing with a child here.
What do you want me to say to that? You said something that's just true.
Well, I didn't know it was true before. I'm like, profit maximize. But you realize after the fact it's true. That was my one question for this, though, is like, it's kind of rationalizing your innovation stack after the fact. Like in the moment, you're like, problem, solve the problem. Problem, solve the problem. Can you solve it by imitating, which is ideal? Or do you have to innovate and create this whole new thing? And it just adds to your stack.
Yeah, the entire like part 2 or something was just examples of good innovation stacks in history, right?
Yeah. They have like the Italian bank and one other, I forget. But yeah, it was a surprising book. It's one of the, I don't know, it's so cool because you have these people that you never hear of. Jim McKelvey, like I hadn't heard that name before, but he's so fundamental in changing how business works. He's also working on other projects now, some have to do with making coding and tech jobs more accessible, and also has this really cool idea that I think James Altucher, they talked about this. I think it's called Invisibly, and it's to solve the problem of ads. And you're just getting served these crappy ads that maybe aren't relevant to you, or you don't want ads at all. What appealed to me is the idea. I don't know if this is exactly accurate, but if you can just pay to turn off ads for all the internet, I guess you have ad blocker, but like even in general, I don't know how exactly it works. That was one of the potential perks, but like your eyeballs are being charged at such a small fee. It's like, can I just pay to like not have ads or tracking or any of this shit ever?
But ad blocker's free, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. But basically, he's working on cool
My
projects.
ad blocker never works. I swear to God, I'm still getting ads everywhere, even though it's on.
Imagine without it.
Yeah, wait, like it used to block YouTube ads, but now it doesn't.
Just get the premium.
Oh, that's probably what it is.
Here's one part that I love, and maybe, I don't know if you have stuff after
I got
this,
a part I love.
Okay. One part I love, this is from the podcast actually, and we'll link that in case you're lazy, don't want to read a book for several hours. But it's his approach to making money and your responsibilities once you make money. Because he talks about how, say you make your money, you make $1 billion, and now you give it to the second generation, your kids. Well, they don't want to lose this $1 billion.
That was in the podcast.
Yeah, it was in the podcast. You don't want to lose this $1 billion, and then you just lock it up in, S&P or whatever it is, your investment fund at Morgan Stanley. And it's gone. Like, it lost all that innovation that can really drive this change. So he's like, I've made X amount of money, a lot of money. It's my responsibility to create more crazy ideas that might push the world forward, because imitation, you're not really going to change much unless you have billions of years in its evolution.
Yeah, it was all about risk. It's like, you go do crazy things with the $1 billion you did, but when you give that to your kid, they're not going to do all those things because there's this guilt to getting a lump sum of money like that.
And losing it all. They don't want to lose it all.
Right.
Whereas you started with not much, nothing.
And he's saying that kind of generational cultivation of capital is fostering laziness and risk averseness and all kinds of. That was really interesting. Yeah, I like that.
He also
take.
talked. I listened to another podcast. I'm forgetting the host name, but they talked about wealth and like the importance of money. And you hear this a lot, but it really doesn't change you. He's living in the same house, has the same friends, everything like that. He doesn't have to worry about bills and stuff like that, which is nice. But his life isn't all that different. He mentioned like, you don't want to have a nice car because guess what? Like, you can't park it in the rain. You're worried it's going to get scratched. You can't drive it. It's uncomfortable. Just a lot of issues. So if money is what you're looking for, don't be an entrepreneur. Be a businessman.
Yeah.
Just create a podcast. Try and monetize that in your simple way.
Yeah. That's the difference, is like, how fast are you looking for your money? And anyone who creates their wealth later in life, like him, like Naval, like any of these people, Steve Jobs, whomever, Warren Buffett, like, they're all living the same way because they came from nothing. Their standards are low. We've talked about voluntary simplicity, Kevin Kelly. It's a lot of men.
I was trying to look up a podcast with women, and it's really hard.
If you, we could use some recommendations, because that was the other thing, is I felt like these were all starting to sound the same, be the same. Everyone's preaching the same. If you can, and we're trying to do this in our guests moving forward, but if you can, anybody recommend a podcast that's women driven or about women entrepreneurs that are really awesome, or crushing it, we need to focus on that too. You want to know my cool thing? What? Say something.
Well, I think, I don't know if we want to get into it, but there are a lot of issues with like risk aversion. Guys are generally more okay with risk, and that's a big part of this. Is you're exploring, you're going outside the bounds of your.
And we've talked about why
village.
that is too before. It's like elementary school,
Yeah.
It's how we foster boys and girls in elementary school to assume risk. I think it's changed a lot since we were in elementary school, but obviously we haven't seen it yet in tech and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. Do you have closing thoughts?
Yeah. I need to find Jim. You know why I need to find Jim? Because in chapter 17, also send an email to you, right? Dylan@smartnonsense.com with a rec. Did anyone get your book? Johnny Bunko?
Kay actually heard it first. I got her a copy, but I'm waiting.
That's not fair.
I'm waiting for. Well, I'll send another one.
Okay. I need to find Jim because chapter 17 was called How It Feels. And basically, he's like, we only praise entrepreneurs for their success and in hindsight. And he's like, I want to see the inside. I want to see when you were scared and you were making these decisions. I was like, Jim, do I have a vlog for you? Do I have a vlog for you? 2-3 times a week, we're doing just that. I'm showing you from ground zero, all the fear, all the testing. But I think it'd be like a video diary that Jim probably wishes he had. And that really resonated with me at the end of the book. Let's stop. I don't get this. We praise entrepreneurs in hindsight and in once they've peaked their success, but we're very, very quick to criticize people jumping in from the get-go, and I still can't figure that out.
What I love is that he's like, he acknowledges that he did it right once, but every time you're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So just because I did it right before doesn't mean that you should listen to me now or whatever. It's interesting. I mean, obviously there are advantages of knowing the ropes, but I think it's cool. Yeah, many people would love to be in your position right now. Granted, statistically, you're probably going to fail with Dunbar.
Why not?
That's not what it's still a cool. You have the story, you move on. We're going to make sure that it doesn't fail because it's a dope idea. But
we got to come back to that too, because you and I have been talking offline about what we went into in the last podcast, and I think we weren't on the same page at all. So
nope, we don't listen to each other, just talking to walls.
Well, I'm worried you were kind of on the founding board here, and you had no idea how the payments worked.
No, I got it. I knew from the start. You're like, okay, maybe we don't get into it.
Another
here.
time.
This is just
I'm leaving.
Another time. The Innovation Stack by Jim McKelvey. Great book. Their podcast too. We'll link them all that I listened to, that Henry listened to. I'm excited. I don't know what we're doing tomorrow.
Talking to your friend Jack.
Oh, is today Thursday? I don't even know the days of the week anymore.
Let me get a guest in here. What? Come on.
You have no friends. You got to use Dunbar. Get that up and running.
Wait, I unplugged my headphones. Say that again.
I said get Dunbar up and running so you can have friends and talk to him on the pod.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back for episode 48. Wow, that's a lot of episodes.
50
tomorrow.
Coming up.
Deuces.